If there are brook trout where you fish, this is a must-have streamer. To start this pattern, we'll grab some ultra thread in 140 in fluorescent orange and secure it to our hook shank. Snip the excess free and continue wrapping to the bend of the hook. Next, we will grab a golden pheasant cape, select a single feather and secure it to the back of the fly. Continue securing it to our hook shank, fold the excess over, and wrap up towards the head of the fly. We'll fold our excess back over and secure it tightly to the head of the fly, snipping the excess free. We'll then grab some brassy wire, here I'm using hot orange. Secure this to our hook shank, wrapping back towards the tail. Once complete, we will return our thread to the head of the fly, grabbing some peacock herl. We'll select about 4 fibers, secure them to the head of the fly, once again wrapping them back towards the tail. Once complete, we'll use our thread to completely cover any visible feathers as we wrap up towards the head of the fly. If you'd like, you can secure some floss to the body to accomplish the same thing. However, I prefer to use thread. Once the body is built up and we've reached the head of our fly, grab your peacock herl, folding it over the back of our fly and securing it tightly in place. Snip the excess free and grab your brassy wire and begin to wrap it forward in open spirals towards the head of the fly. If your peacock herl begins to twist in the process, just simply push it back into place and continue securing with your wire. Take your time with this step and try to make sure the wire is evenly spaced. Once we reach our thread, we'll secure by taking thread wraps both in front as well as behind and helicoptering the excess free. We will whip finish, snipping our orange thread free. We will then grab some ultra thread in black, securing this to the head of our fly. Snip your excess free and grab a white bucktail. Select a small clump of fur about the size of your streamer and secure it tightly to the head of our fly. To do so, we'll take a loop around the fur prior to tightening it down on the head of the fly. This will help prevent the deer hair from spinning around our hook. With the deer hair secure, we'll tighten it down and snip the excess free. Cover any exposed fur and take your time not to build up too much thread. Next, we will grab some red feathers, selecting a small clump and tying it onto the throat of our fly. Secure tightly, snip the excess free, and grab a white goose feather. Cut a small portion free and tie it onto the bottom of our fly. With it lightly secured, we can move it to where we would like it to be and secure it tightly. Snip the excess free and whip finish to hold everything in place. And this is a baby brook trout. I like to use this pattern most in backcountry brook trout ponds. However, it also works well anywhere you find brook trout and in the fall. If you'd like to support the channel and try this fly, you can visit my website below or submit a custom order. Thank you for watching, subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next one. Today, we're going to be making a guppy that I like to use to swing through the current. To start, we'll grab some white thread, continue wrapping until you reach the bend of the hook, and grab a mallard flank. Pull free a few fibers and secure them to the back of the fly. Continue securing to the hook shank until you reach your bead. Snip the excess free and wrap your thread back down to the hook point. Next, we'll grab some crystal flash. Here I'm using UV pearl, securing a single strand to the hook shank, folding it over and attaching it to the other side, and wrap back to the hook point. Next, we'll grab some peacock herl. Select about 3 strands, invert your hook, and secure it to the bottom of our fly. Continue securing until we reach our tail, wrapping back up to the bead, and securing some more crystal flash, once again wrapping back down towards the tail. With this complete, use your thread to build up a smooth body, finishing just before the bead. Next, we'll grab our crystal flash and begin to wrap this in close touching spirals until we reach our thread, at which point we'll secure and snipping the excess free. We'll then grab some egg yarn. Here I'm using a light pink. Select a small clump, folding it over your thread, wrapping it slightly back to the body of the fly. Fold over the egg yarn to create a small egg sac and secure it using your thread. Once secure, snip the excess free. Fold over your peacock and secure it to the top of the fly, taking thread wraps both in front as well as behind and snipping the excess free. Whip finish to hold everything in place. Snip your thread free and grab some thin UV resin to paint over the fly. Once happy, secure with the UV light, adding some thick UV resin over the top of our fly to create a rounded shape. Take your time with this and only secure it once you're happy. We'll then grab some eyes. Add a little bit of UV resin to the side of the bead, carefully placing the eye and securing it once happy. Repeat this step to the other side and add some more UV resin to fill in the gap. I like to use this fly during high water. Swinging across the current like a wet fly can result in some aggressive strikes, but it also works well under an indicator. If you'd like to win this fly, comment #flytying in the comments below. Subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next one. You have to try this productive springtime trout streamer. To start, we'll grab some black thread. Here I'm using 6/0, cure it to our hook shank, and lay down a thread base for our next steps. We'll then grab some wire and a stinger hook. Here I'm using a size 8, which I find perfect for most trout. Measure it to length, keeping it about the size of our hook shank, and using our thread to secure it tightly. Wrap up towards the hook eye, folding your wire over and securing it back towards the hook. This will help ensure that it stays in place. Snip your wire free using the back end of your scissors and carefully secure the tag ends to the hook shank. Once complete, we'll whip finish and snip our thread free, swapping it out for a smaller yet durable 70 denier UTC. Secure it to your hook shank, snip the excess free, and continue wrapping down the hook shank a bit further than we left off. Once complete, bring your thread forward and create a dubbing loop. Next, we'll grab some fluorescent pink ice dubbing, straightening out the fibers by using your fingers to separate them, pinch them back together, and continuing this process until they lay flat. At which point, we'll insert them into our dubbing loop, space it out with your fingers, and use your fingers or a weighted tool to help spin it up. And brush it out to give it a nice, buggy look. With this complete, we'll begin wrapping it around our hook shank, brushing back any fibers to ensure that we don't trap it underneath. Continue this process about halfway up the hook shank. Once complete, use your thread to secure the dubbing loop in place, taking thread wraps both in front as well as behind, and snipping the excess free. Grab your dubbing brush, brush out any trapped fibers, and of course, give it a nice, buggy look. With this complete, wrap back on your dubbing slightly to help brush it back. Also, one simple trick with these intruders is to take a piece of foam and stick it over the hook eye so your materials or fingers don't get stuck in it. We'll then create another dubbing loop just in front of our pink dubbing ball, grabbing some white ice dubbing, UV white larval lace, and a little more pink ice dubbing. Create another dubbing blend and slide this up our dubbing loop, spinning it up and brushing it free just as we did before. With this complete, we'll carefully begin to wrap it forward in close touching spirals, brushing back any fibers to ensure we don't trap them. We'll continue about 3/3 of the way up the hook. And if you have a little too much dubbing, you can secure it early and snip the excess free. Brushing everything back and taking a few thread wraps on top of it to give it a nice brush bath look. Brush any trapped fibers free. Next, we'll grab some lateral scales. Here I'm using a pearl. Secure it to one side, folding the excess over and securing it to the opposite. We'll trim these to length to reach a little bit past our hook. Next, we'll grab some white marabou, brush the fibers backwards, and snip the tip free, leaving us with a small tie-in point secure to your hook shank. and begin to palmer it up the body. Once again, being sure to brush all the fibers backwards to give it a better look. Typically, I like to do about 2 to 3 turns, depending on the look you're going for. Once happy, use your thread to secure the marabou in place and snip the excess free. Brushing all your fibers backwards and wrapping on top of it to help give it that brush back look. We'll then grab a grizzly saddle hackle, grab 2 fibers and secure them to the upper portion of our fly. I find it's usually easiest to start with one and then tie in the second. Secure them tightly and snip the excess free. We'll then grab a mallard flank. For this pattern, I prefer to use the slightly darker ones that have a little bit of brown in them. However, it's hard to find them sold like this, so either go into a fly shop and find what you're looking for, but if not, you can always swipe it out for a white alternative. Secure it to the head of the fly, and begin to wrap this forward, once again, about 2 to 3 turns, brushing the fibers back as you go, and laying the stem just in front of the previous wrap. Once happy, use your thread to secure, and snip the excess free. Carefully cover up your tag end and build up a small head section, wrapping back on the mallard flank slightly. Whip finish to hold everything in place. Seat your knot and snip your thread free, and brush it out to help separate your mallard flank and give it that nice buggy look. Clean up the head and add durability by painting it over with some UV resin. Fix in place with a UV light, and this is a micro intruder pattern that I created to imitate our local springtime smelt. It's a great pattern that I had a lot of success on last year. I'd give this one away, but I'm trying to fill up my fly box before the season starts. Now remember, if you'd like to help support the channel, you can pick up some flies on my website or submit a custom order form. Thank you for watching, subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next one.
We're going to be tying up a marabou variation of the classic Steve Carey's Black Ghost. Now we're going to start with a flat black thread. I like to use Ultra Thread 140. Give ourselves a little bit of space for the head of the fly. Snip that free and then continue all the way to the end of the shank. And then we're going to grab ourselves a yellow feather. I like to grab about 1/4 to 1/2 of an inch. Make sure that's nice and even, and then tear that off. Measure that out to be about 1/4 of our hook shank in length, and then secure it to the back of the hook. Once that's good and secure, we can start to wrap forward a little bit, grab our scissors, and then snip that off at an angle. Snipping it off at an angle is going to allow us to create a more seamless transition when we're building up our body. We'll grab ourselves some brassy wire in silver. Now this is typically tied with a tinsel, however I really like the durability that these brass wires offer, and the ribbing looks quite good as well. So we're going to secure that to the back of the hook, and once that's finished we can start to create a seamless body transition to the head of the fly. Now if you want, you can use a piece of yarn or something of the sort to build up your body by attaching it to the back. However, I like the simplicity of just using my flat black thread. Once that's finished, we'll grab our wire and start making some even wraps towards the head of the fly. Secure that wire down. I like to take some thread wraps both in front as well as behind because it makes helicoptering off the wire afterwards much easier. With our wire removed, we're going to grab some white marabou. Now I like to use the tips because these offer a lot more action in the water. Measure that to be about 1.5 times our hook shank in length. Once we're happy with our length, we're going to secure that. Snipping off the excess once again at an angle. Next, I like to start to build up the head of my fly, but I don't get too carried away here because we still have one more material to add. We're going to go ahead and invert our fly if you have a rotating vise. If not, it's not a big deal. And grab some more of our yellow feather, about 1/4 to 1/2 inch in length. And then we're going to use that to create a throat of our fly. I like to measure mine just short of our hook point. Snip off our excess nice and close. From here, we're going to clean up the head of the fly, make sure no yellow or white is showing. Finish off building off our head using our whip finisher. That way we don't have too much excess thread on the fly. Once we're happy with that, we're going to make sure it's nice and secure. Give it a little tug and then snip it free. We're going to burn off any remaining fibers that we have at our head of the fly. Grab some UV resin and apply our first coat. Now this first coat sinks into the thread wraps a little bit, creates a nice even transition. Hit it with the UV light, securing everything in place, and then we'll come back in for a second coat. This second coat smooths everything out. It makes the head nice and even. Hit it once again with the UV light, and there you have it. That is a marabou variation of the classic black ghost. I'd highly encourage you to give it a try. If you don't tie yourself, but you'd still love to try this pattern, you can go down to my website, fill out the custom order form, and I'd be happy to send some your way. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Today we're going to be tying up one of my favorite variations of the golden retriever. Now, this is going to be a longer format video for those who want to follow along. We're going to be using a 3X hook. This is in size 6, and it's paired with a Firehole Stone 5 32nd bead. We're going to use some flat Ultra Thread 140 in black. This is definitely my favorite thread to tie with for any streamer. And we're going to wrap up to the front and use a lead-free wire to help secure this bead in place so it's not spinning around the hook when we're finished with this fly. Once we get that secure, you can just helicopter it free and then wrap our thread all the way to the back of the hook shank. Now we're going to grab some olive marabou, and I like to use the tips because all this fine feathers that we have adds a lot of action to the fly. We're going to measure that out to be about 1.5 times the hook length. If you go much further in that, it can get wrapped up in the hook. Secure our feather to the hook, fold over the marabou, and then wrap our thread all the way to the front, fold the marabou back over, and then secure at the head of the fly. This is just going to help us build up a body. So once we get that tied down, we're going to snip that excess free and then try to get all these feathers to lay flat. Next up, we're going to grab some crystal flash. This is in olive, but orange also looks really good with this olive pattern as well. Secure that to the hook and then fold it over and secure it on the other side. That way we only have to use these 4 strands to do both sides. We're going to secure it down a little bit tighter. And then we're going to snip it to length, and we want it to be a little bit longer than our marabou. Next up, we're going to grab some UV estaz, and I like to trim off the tips of it, and that way we can just secure the braided line of it straight to the fly. Now that we're done with that, we want to create a nice uniform body, so we're going to wrap our thread around our hook shank until we completely cover any visible feathers, braided line, or anything like that, and try to keep it as uniform as possible. If you want to add a taper to it, a lot of people like their golden retrievers tied like that. Personally, I like mine to be nice and uniform and kind of thin. I think it adds a good profile to the fly. Now once you're happy with your body, we can move on to the next part. So we're going to grab our staz and we're going to start to wrap that up the fly. Now you want to keep some of this black underbody visible, so we're going to give it a little bit of space in between, and on each wrap we're going to grab the staz and start to pull it backwards so we're not trapping any of the fibers underneath it. Now once we reach that point and you're happy with your wraps, you can grab your thread and secure that just behind the head and then snip it free. Grab a whip finisher and we can use this to create a band around the head of the fly. You can use as many or as few wraps as you want, as long as you use enough to secure it, about 6 to 8 wraps. I like my band to stand out a little bit. I think it's a cool little addition to this fly. Once that's secure, we'll snip it free, and then we can trim any fibers that are sticking out past the head to add a little bit of a rounded shape towards the back of the fly. And then once we're happy with everything, grab a little bit of head cement. A little bit goes a long way, and then use this to make sure our thread wraps are going to stay in place. And there you go. This is my variation of a golden retriever. It's an excellent fly pattern that I have had a ton of luck with. And if you're not a fly tyer and want to try this for yourself, you can go to my website that's going to be linked down below, submit a custom order form, and I'd be happy to send some your way. So thanks for watching, guys, and good luck out on the water.
This is one of my all-time favorite fly patterns that works particularly well for catching brook trout. To tie this pattern, we'll start off with some black thread, grabbing a golden pheasant crest. Select a single feather and measure it to be a bit shorter than our hook shank. Secure this to the back of the fly. Continue securing the feather well up the hook shank until we reach the hook eye. At which point, we'll snip the excess free, cover our tag end, and grab some peacock herl. Select a couple fibers and secure them to the head of the fly, wrapping back towards your tail. Once complete, reverse your thread's direction just before the hook point, and begin wrapping your herl forward in closed, touching spirals, doing so until you reach your thread. At which point, secure with your thread, leaving a small 1/4" section that we'll get back to in just a bit. Move your thread in front of the peacock herl and wrap towards the hook eye. We'll then begin to wrap our peacock feather forward, just as before, until we reach our thread. Secure. And snip the excess free. With this complete, we'll whip finish, snip our thread free, and swap out to a red thread. Here I'm using an Ultra Thread 140. Secure this to your abdomen, filling in this small section with our red thread, a signature characteristic of this pattern. Snip your excess free, and begin to build up a prominent base of your thread. Once complete, whip finish, and snip your thread free. Swapping back to your black thread. We'll then grab a turkey flat. I like to use this molted feather that I got from one of my hunting trips. Select 2 clumps of your feather, measure them to be about the length of the tail, and secure it using a pinch wrap. This will help prevent your feather from twisting around the eye. Once happy, continue securing tightly and snip the excess free. We'll then grab a cape, here I'm using an Inferno color, and secure a small clump to the bottom of your fly to make up the throat. I generally like my fibers to extend just about to the hook point. Secure tightly and snip the excess free. We'll clean up our head section, whip finish, snip our thread free, and paint it over with some UV resin. And this is the Royal Coachman. It's one of my childhood favorites that has caught me many brook trout. It works great as a small streamer, or as I like to use it, as a wet fly. You can tie it with the materials listed in the description, or you can pick it up from my website, and I will see you in the next one. We're going to be tying up a favorite of mine for fall brook trout and salmon. To start this pattern, we'll grab some black UTC and secure that to our hook shank. Cut the excess free and continue wrapping to the bend of our hook. Next, we can grab some silver wire. Here I'm using brassy, securing it tightly to the back of the fly. As the body, you can use a gold or silver tinsel, but I like to use this flashier hollow tinsel. Secure this to the back of the fly. Once complete, we can start to build up the body. We want to create a nice smooth transition towards the head of the fly. Next, we'll put in a couple turn whip finish, set our thread aside. If you have a rotating vise, this makes things easier. However, it's not necessary. Simply wrap the tinsel forward up the body of our fly in touching spirals. Do so until you reach your thread. At this point, we'll secure tightly, taking wraps both in front as well as behind and snipping the tinsel free. We can then grab our silver wire and begin to wrap this in open spirals towards the head of the fly. You want to take your time to make sure that the wraps are evenly spaced. This step will add some additional durability to our tinsel and also give it a nice 3D look. Secure by taking thread wraps both in front and behind. And helicoptering free. Next, we'll grab some yellow marabou, select a few fibers, and measure them to be about 1 1/4 hook shanks in length. Secure it tightly to the head of our fly, and snip the excess free at an angle. Clean up the head a little bit, and then grab a red marabou feather. Once again, we'll select a few fibers, matching the length of our yellow feathers. Snip the excess free at an angle, clean up the head slightly, and then grab some yellow marabou to top it all off. Once again securing this and snipping the excess free. We'll then take our time cleaning up any visible feathers towards the head of our fly. Once complete, we'll grab a whip finisher, securing everything in place, and then we'll add some UV resin. This will increase the durability as well as give it a nice smooth look. Once happy, we'll secure with the UV light, and that is the marabou Mickey fin. These colors work very well for brook trout and salmon in the fall. If you want to try to win this fly, you can view the comments below for more details. Subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next one.
We're going to be tying the Woods Special. For starters, we're going to use some flat black thread. We'll start our thread a little ways behind our hook eye and secure it to the hook shank. Snip free and continue to the back of the hook. Here we'll grab a golden pheasant head, pull off a single feather, and use this to create a tail of our fly. Snip the excess free, further secure it to the hook shank, and grab some silver tinsel. We'll secure that to the hook and wrap it back towards the tail of our fly. Next, we'll grab some orange chenille. Here I'm using a fluorescent orange. Secure it to the hook shank and wrap our thread to the head of the fly. We'll then grab our chenille and start wrapping it towards the head of our fly. Make sure the wraps are nice and tight so no underbody is showing. Once we reach the head of the fly, we'll secure it, taking thread wrap in front as well as behind the chenille. Snip free, grab your tinsel, and start wrapping it in open spirals towards the head of our fly. Secure, snip free. We will then use our thread to create a base for the next materials. I've selected to use a mallard flank, however traditionally this pattern was tied with wood duck. Measure the flanks so that the tips end where your tail does. Once happy, we can transfer our measurement and secure that to our fly. Snip the excess free and grab some grizzly hackle. Here I've selected a size 8 for my size 6 hook. Secure that to the head of our fly, snip the excess free, and begin to hackle it forward towards the head of our fly. Once happy, we can use our thread to secure our hackle in place. Pull everything back and take a few more thread wraps to further secure our hackle. Snip the excess free and wrap back on our hackle just slightly so that the fibers stand back a little bit. Burn away any excess fibers and whip finish to hold everything in place. Snip the thread free and paint some UV resin over the head of our fly for shine and further durability. This is one of my favorite patterns to use in the fall in small brook trout ponds and has caught me many fish. If you don't tie yourself and you'd like to try this fly out, you can visit my website down below and submit a custom order form. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.
This is a fly that's very popular in my home waters, but relatively unknown everywhere else. We'll start this pattern by grabbing some red UTC and securing it to our hook shank. Snip the excess free and continue wrapping your thread to the bend of the hook. We will then grab some ginger marabou, securing it tightly to the back of the fly. In order to build up the body, we'll fold over the marabou, wrap our thread forward, and then fold the marabou back towards the bead, securing it in place. Further secure the marabou to your hook shank, and this is a quick way to build up a body. Snip the excess free and grab some gold staz. Pulling off the tips, exposing the braided line, and secure it to the back of the fly. Once complete, we will start to wrap our thread forward, taking time to completely cover any exposed feathers. This is a key step in producing this pattern. Once complete, we will grab our gold staz and begin wrapping it forward in open spirals, using your fingers to pull the staz backwards each wrap to ensure you don't trap any underneath. Once at the bead, we will secure the staz in place, taking wraps both in front and behind, snipping the excess free. We can then grab a whip finisher and build up a prominent band at the head of our fly. This is a hot spot that's very characteristic of this pattern. And this is the golden retriever. Originally invented for panfish, it is also extremely successful for trout and salmon. If you'd like to try this fly, but don't tie yourself, you can visit my website listed below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.
We are going to be tying the Myers jig leech. Now for starters, I've selected a Vivas 12-aught in white, and we'll be using a firehole stone Euro jig hook and matching gold bead. We'll start our securing thread wraps right behind the bead head and snap the excess free. Next we'll wrap back up towards the bead of our fly. Now you can see that our bead is quite loose, and I've got a lot of questions about why I use this lead-free wire. Well, this helps secure our bead in place, so we're going to adhere that to the hook shank, wrap it down tightly and helicopter free, and now you can see that our bead is set firmly in place. We'll then grab some pink crystal flash, snip off about 3 strands, secure that to our hook shank, and wrap back well into the bend of our hook. Once complete, we'll return our thread to the bead of the fly, grab our flash, and start wrapping these in tight spirals up towards the head of our fly. You want to make sure that none of the hook shank is showing. Once we reach the head of our fly, we will secure by taking thread wraps in front as well as behind our flash and snipping free. Grab some UV resin and we'll paint this over the flash to give it a more shiny look and also increase its durability. Once happy, we can set that in place using our UV light and grab a pink zonker strip. We're going to tie the head in so that the fibers face towards the back of the hook, taking thread wraps back into the zonker strip itself to give us room for the next step. We will then cut the zonker strip to length. I like to have mine be about twice as long as our hook shank. Now we will grab some ostrich hurl, strip off some of the fibers on the tips, and use that to attach it to the head of our fly. Snip the excess free, and then we'll start hackling the ostrich hurl towards the head of our fly. Once complete, we will secure it in place by taking thread wraps both in front as well as behind, and then you should be able to just pull the excess free. And this is one of my favorite variations for trout. They love the pink color, and the action that it provides is great for enticing finicky fish. If you liked today's video, hit that like button and make sure you hit subscribe to see more just like it. If you guys need to stock up your fly box, I have a whole fly shop that you can do so. I have some flies that are ready to ship out. And if you want some more custom work, you can go to the custom order forums and submit a form there. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.